So today's session I put down as how we see the world, and how we see the world around us is it really influences our resilience and empowerment. So that's my way of shoehorning in an existing presentation I have. So because how we see the world is a real big component of that. And I was thinking of starting the presentation right there, but I will lead up to it, and it depends how much time we have, how far I get through this, and I may even split this over 2 sessions, but we'll see. So let me share this presentation. So first of all, let me confirm you can see that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So we're around resilience and empowerment. The thing that really impacts us here, and I guess this being mental health awareness, is the concept of stress and anxiety. And what resilience and empowerment gives us is the ability to live as a human being, because it's not that we don't have emotional ups and downs. It just depends how resilient we are within them, so that we come back. And so when I think about stress, I think about our reactions to feeling safe or unsafe. When it's things are known or unknown, when you're in control of them, or when things seemed outside of your control, and that can happen in many different ways depending upon your particular world or your experiences. And anxiety really comes about from there. It's thinking about the things that you don't want instead of thinking of the things that you do want. Now, all of these things have impact on your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And so physically, they, as I've put on there, they'll influence your heart rate, your breathing, your temperature, and your feelings. That butterflies in your stomach. So all of these things impact us, in that trilogy, the mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Resilience. So this is what I'm talking about: resilience and what it is. And I thought this was interesting, because I will try and look at the origins of words, as I did yesterday, talking about the vagus nerve. The resilience, from the its kind of core, is about rebound and recoil, the ability of an elastic material to absorb energy and spring back. So this is why I think resilience is about us being able to spring back from everyday experiences. Because I said, it's not that we can't stop we can't make ourselves superhuman. We just want to be able to go along life and live it, and be able to bounce back and see things for what they really are. And how much resilience we have really depends upon how much we give of ourselves, and how much we will have, how much space we have in our reservoir. So I like this analogy, and I love seeing this physically demonstrated in a class, where it just depends how much space you've got in your cup. Because if you're not regularly emptying it out, then you basically, at some point, it has the ability to overflow. And the components of resilience are, they really came to my life in when the work I do with dementia carers count. We talk about it a lot there, and these are the components which psychologists have shown the attributes of resilience. And some of them are obvious, and some of them are interesting when you explore them. So self-care. What do you do for your own self-care? Now, some of this could be what we were speaking about yesterday, the breathing exercises. So it could be, when do you take 5 minutes for yourself? Pampering. What gives you comfort? What recharges your batteries? Is it, okay, I'm going to sit down with the crosswords. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to watch a few episodes. I'm going to just Netflix and wait till it says, "Are you still there?" As long as it's one of those things that you're doing in a way that's recharging your batteries, then make some space, make some time for it. What is it you do just for you that recharges your batteries? Because in when I think I'm kind of crossing over into the concept here of being, if we're going to be responsible for others, then we need to be responsible for ourselves first. Otherwise, we're just kind of, that reservoir is just filling up without us creating space for ourselves too. Sense of self. And again, this is an interesting one, depending upon the context in which I deliver it. But if it's remembering, in some cases, who we are as an individual, what are our passions, what are our likes and dislikes. Now, it's sometimes, if I put the hat on when I'm talking to carers, they can be then known as the person who is responsible for getting the person they care for to the hospital, booking appointments, picking up medication, but they can lose their sense of self. And knowing it or remembering, you might be a parent, you might be a sibling, you might have a partner. It's, what are your interests? Who are you as an individual? So that sense of self is so vital within us, remembering our passions. Relationships. When that word's up there, perhaps we instantly think about our relationships with other people, persons, human beings. And yeah, of course, that's part of it. At the same time, it's much more than that, because we can have a relationship with a place. It's one of those things when we think about being somewhere or being with somebody, it can like lift us, to make us kind of smile. A relationship, I said yesterday, the cat joined me. So, I'm long story, but I'm babysitting, looking after my daughter's rabbits at the moment. So my interaction with them in the morning is hilarious. So, people, places, pets, our relationship with items. Now, and I think within who would have, maybe for some people, the example I'm going to give is only a recent thing. In the lockdowns that we've had, where we've had lack of physical contact, then perhaps people's phones have become so important to them as a point of contact. And whether that's getting to introducing this new word in the language, the English language, Zoom. I mean, Zoom probably now is, nobody would have heard of it over 12 months ago, but it's just commonplace today. It's, if you're going to search something on the internet, you say Google. If you're going to video call somebody, perhaps the first thing you're going to Zoom. So yeah, I mean, like, these devices have become so important, and we have a relationship with them now. They may be a point of entertainment, games, watching videos, above and beyond that communication, but our relationships with people, places, pets, or items are such a vital component of resilience. Development. Something you're learning, developing skills. Knowledge has a purpose. So, and I think that's the important point, purpose. What are you doing that gives you purpose within your kind of life right now? It doesn't have to be grand. It could be something, I'm just going to go and watch that on YouTube, or I just saw an interesting documentary. What are you doing that kind of fulfills that curiosity within you, which again, I guess, leads back into that sense of self. So yeah, development. What are you doing for your development to kind of push your curiosity, to feed your curiosity? Belonging. Belonging is feeling part of something, whether it's a community, a network, clubs, friends, like-minded people, organizations, colleagues. And at one point, again, we would have meant, physically meeting. But today, this is a virtual community today as well, which I think is pretty amazing. And I spoke to somebody yesterday, and they said how they had joined something which is now continued, and they now have a kind of a virtual group which is from individuals all over the world, which is amazing, because there's an opportunity to learn there as well. Because in the example they gave me, it was food related. So they were saying, somebody would share a recipe from America, then here in the UK, so well, we don't know what that is. So there's a lot of conversations, but it's that a community again, that belonging, and all of this, it gives you that space in your reservoir. It kind of puts you in that recharge zone.
Andrew?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that all of those seem to resonate quite well with what we teach about the psychological needs, the 6 psychological needs as well. So they seem to almost emulate the same sort of message, don't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, and the beauty of yeah, well, absolutely. Simple as that. It's that core thing within us. What feeds us, what fills us. And these are just an example of the attributes. And they do completely overlay with, so in the example where I've delivered them in the context of dementia carers count, these specifically overlay to the needs of a person who's living with dementia as well. So yeah, absolutely. So having a positive filter. And interesting, having a positive filter can really be talking about our internal talk, how we speak. So what I'm going to bring and highlight here is something called the RAS. I don't know if anybody's come across the RAS, and I'm going to look this up now because I always say it wrong, so I want to make sure it's on the screen in front of me. The reticular activating system. It's a component of the brain that I was about to say all of our senses. I don't think our sense of, it's not smell or taste. One of them doesn't go through this, but it's at the kind of at the back of it. I think it's the top of the brainstem, and it's all of our input comes through that. So it's a bit of a filter. Now, what we are focused on, as you can see on the screen there, is our unconscious mind wants to seek evidence to please us, okay? And it thinks that whatever is important to us, it wants to find evidence to prove that. So in this example, if you have an internal, you see that kind of that circular endless loop where if we have a belief in our mind and which generates self-talk, then that's our little program. That's important to us. So the unconscious mind goes out to find evidence to prove that. So it filters out the rest of the stuff that would disprove it through the reticular activating system. It only lets through the information that proves it for us. So if you've got these questions, these things going around, this self-talk, I'm always late, I'm not good enough, if this is going around, then your unconscious mind will be looking for it to prove it. So again, this is information. This is, I guess I'm turning the volume a bit, because once you know that, then perhaps you can start to change it. And sometimes change comes through repetition. A lot of people talk about having mantras and so on like this, and it depends on whether they resonate with you. The important thing to remember is, if you notice yourself with a negative self-talk, change it. And if you catch yourself, change it. And then all of a sudden, it happens unconsciously. You don't have to change it. You are changed. So I'm really just kind of bringing it into the awareness now. So again, if you have a positive belief, your unconscious mind through the RAS will filter out everything else, and it will look for evidence to prove that positive belief. And an example of this could be, and I find this quite funny because I see if I deliver this in a group, somebody will just like nod. If somebody's looking for a car, the color of a car, if you're going to go and purchase a car, can be, it's important. I want this or I don't want that. Now, so you've got the attributes, you've got the make, the model, whatever, and the color. So you've gone and you chose it, and maybe because it's a little bit unusual. As soon as you've purchased that car, I would guarantee the fact that within the first few days, you will see so many other cars of either the same make and same color. They were always there before, but they were never important. But now they're important to you because it's yours, and now you will see them around you. So this is it's an interesting phenomenon that this RAS filters stuff out that isn't important, but it allows through the things that are important to you, and it's up to the way you believe and your internal beliefs on what's important, because the unconscious mind is there to please you.
How do you suggest we change it, Andrew? Are you talking about doing self-affirmations and things like that?
So let's see if this next bit gives you some answers.
Okay.
Let's see what happens, because this is really the kind of the core of today. When I said how we see the world, so this is how we see the world. Okay, and this is a brilliant, and this, I'm going back right to the beginning. I could have started here, but I wanted to kind of lead into it, because I spoke about how stress and anxiety influences our emotions, our physical well-being, our mental well-being. This trilogy, how we see the world, our emotions, our state, and our physiology, are three components that are determined by what we see and what we allow through to our mind. So if we imagine, as I said right at the beginning, that anxiety comes from thinking about what we don't want. Stress comes from how we perceive the world around us as being something stressful. So let's understand how we're building that picture of the world around us. So the outside world comes to us through our senses. What we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we smell, what we taste. Okay. So that's our input. Now all of that comes comes through the RAS, comes in, and it's so much information that we can't possibly process it all. So we have to, even the information that comes through, we have to then filter it. And the filtering is done by deletion, distortion, and generalization. So some of that can be, that we're learning from the past. So we'll see a bit of information, and we'll make an assumption. Oh, well, this is what's happened in the past. So we'll generalize it. Distortion can be when you're walking along, perhaps, and you see a figure up ahead and has some basic resemblance to somebody you know. So you then fill in the pieces, and which can go one of two ways. It is or it isn't them. So, and the deletion, as we were saying before, if it's not important to you, it's deleted. It's just not relevant information. So there is this whole process of what's left. What do we do with it? Well, we form our internal representation of the world. And just a quick thing about that internal representation, and this is where language is important. If I say to you now to not think of a blue tree, so don't think of a blue tree, and I'm going to suggest to you the first thing you do is you think about a blue tree so you know what to not think about. And so when we're told not to do something, it's interesting that we don't, unless we're linguistically trained, we don't process. We won't listen to a negative. So, for example, with children, if we see them running, and we say don't run, all they hear is run. Or if there's a selection of food ready for a buffet on the table, and we've done it, and we say don't eat that or don't have that, so eat that, okay, off I go. It's instead of saying stop running, instead of saying what we do want, we say what we don't want. So language is so important about how we process it as well. But so we've got all this information in, and it's too much to process. So we have to delete it, distort it, and generalize it. So what we focus on, it seems important. So that comes through. Our past experiences will help us form a generalization. And a distortion, we'll make assumptions based on some information and what we recognize as well from our library stored of past experiences. The thing here is we need to be conscious that this is happening, because if we're conscious of it, then we won't jump to conclusions. So, we form an internal representation. within our mind. We paint a picture and we give it that identity. So as I was saying, if we see an outline of a person, and we'll start filling in the outline, and then we'll fill in the detail. Now, either without it being there, or when we get it there, we'll fill it in. That we'll stamp it with an identity. Once you've given that internal representation an identity, that generates our state, our emotions. Do we, are we happy about that, or is there something that kind of takes us back? That then state influences our physiology, so our heart rate, our breathing, our temperature, and then all of that is seen and witnessed by other people as our behavior. So when I work with people, I'm really getting to understand how they're behaving, how they're thinking, because then I can feed this back to them in a constructive way to say that, we can understand what information is coming through, how they're seeing the world based on their past influences, what assumptions are they making. But if they know this, then we can start to make some changes, because it's catching yourself. If you have this information, you notice you're generating a behavior that you don't like, because that's the output, then have a think, why am I doing this? Why am I behaving this way? Well, is it because how I see the world around me? Is it because I was feeling low already? Or is it because something physiological is going on already? Because each one of those things can influence the other, because you see the arrows are going in two directions. And that can actually benefit us, because if you want to lift your mood, then one of the things, a simple solution to that can be, well, think of a time when you were happy. Think of a time when you were how you want to be. And in your mind, take yourself back there and see what you saw, hear what you heard, and feel what you felt. Because the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real or imagined, which is why if you can take yourself back to a time with feeling how you wanted to feel, how you want to feel now, it can start to create a shift and bring you back, and just lift your mood a little bit, and it'll influence your behavior. Physiology. If I've got time, I'll show you some slides in a moment. If you stand in a powerful way, that influences your body chemistry, and it will lift you, and it'll make you more empowered, and that changes your state. That changes how you see the world around you. And if you have that positive filter, that positive self-belief, then you're going to see the world in a different way. You're going to see a brighter picture instantly. So Sarah, does that, there's a lot of information there. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the practices behind it, and you actually said you've got to recognize it to be able to change it, haven't you?
Yeah.
So it's actually, you often say it, don't you, about being in the moment and recognizing what you're feeling and how you're reacting to it. So I think that's something that we as people have to learn, is being in that moment to be able to affect this change.
Absolutely. And I think what we spoke about yesterday, we spoke about breathing exercises, and so which can instantly calm you down. And what I'm talking about here is, I guess, understanding how we see the world and how that influences us. And I think tomorrow, what we're going to add in the element is how we create that space between the thoughts, so we can, we might catch ourselves eventually with just the awareness, and then perhaps what you're hinting at now is, and what's maybe starting tomorrow, is how do we make sure that we are creating the space between the thoughts, so that we are catching ourselves sooner. And that's when we're talking more around some specific mindfulness practices, because you are so right. With information alone, you will catch yourself. At the same time, it's going to be a practiced thing. With anything, it's always a practice thing. It's just, I think, with mindfulness, we're being a bit more specific. But let me so before I go on to the next bit, are there any questions? So I mentioned about the physiology and something around poses. So I'm just going to share this little bit here. Power posing. I'm not sure if anybody's come across this. Exactly, that's what it is. Exactly. So this came from a study. A lady called Amy Cuddy, and if anybody, what I would say is watch her YouTube. No, not YouTube. TED Talk. If you watch her TED Talk, she talks about in the animal kingdom how somebody becomes dominant, they take up more space, and subservient animals within a pack take up are smaller. But the interesting thing is that how much that changes your body chemistry. So I'm just going to go flip it to the next screen a little bit. So here, so a high power post taking up more space. It changes your testosterone goes up and your cortisol comes down. So you're more dominant, you're more assertive, and you're more resilient to stress. And the complete opposite is if you're low, you're smaller, and your testosterone drops and your cortisol increases. So you're more stress alert, and you're more risk averse. Now, so that's the evidence from the body, from the tests done. Now, and these are the poses. But the beauty in the example of how I love this as an example is because in her study, she got students to do a mock interview, and then they played the videos that are recorded to some companies, and each and every one of the companies chose the people who had previously been doing a power pose for 2 minutes prior to the interview. And I got to say that because it's not a case of you're in the interview stood there like this, look at me, hire me, I made that mistake in a presentation before. So before you go into an interview, so all the people who had done the power posing before their interview were the ones that were chosen. And what I thought was really fascinating is the explanation given. It wasn't because their answers were kind of bigger or bolder. It was that the panel who watched the videos thought that they, as individuals, had brought more of themselves to the interview, that they were more authentic, and which I thought was really interesting. That is me in a nutshell for today, how we see the world, how it influences our resilience, and it empowers us. So any questions, any thoughts?
That's really interesting. It really is really interesting.
Stop the sharing.
Because I don't know about you, Angela, but those across the bottom that you had, the pictures across the bottom, that's me in a nutshell. That's how I sit.
I'm actually sitting here now with my arms folded, and as soon as I saw that, I unfolded them.
It isn't interesting. It's those little bits of information that can really, how do there's a campaign going at the moment called One Small Change, and it's what small change can you make that empowers you in the day. And it could be the way you're standing. It could be catching that little bit of internal self-talk, or it could be just noticing what you think is important and just changing that filter.
I've got another meeting in a bit, so I shall see how I shall consciously think of what I'm doing now.
Are you going to stand there like that, Angela?
I'm going to be like that for the rest. Like, oh, here I am. Yeah. No, it's really interesting just to find out the internal workings of it all, and how it can, as you say, if you think about it, and it can change, and it can be a massive change for some people. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's within that what's called the communication model, understanding how we see the world and how it influences us, me putting the word RAS, reticular activating system, at there is quite a generalization. At the same time, I think it's the most effective and understandable. You can break those filters down into much more smaller chunks, which I have more information on, but for things, but I think it's easier and tangible to look at that in that specific way, is this knowing that there is this part of the human brain which all but one of our senses come through, and it acts as a filter because it only lets through what's important to us.
Brilliant.
That's our time.
I'm going to have to leave you and leave you.
Yes,
No worries.
thank you very much. Thank
You're welcome.
We'll see you tomorrow for part 2. We'll be both twisted like that.
We'll be like that.
Or like that.
Yeah.
Take care. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.